Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Professor Ian Talbot, it is indeed a pleasure for me to welcome Dr. Akbar S. Ahmed for his remarks on his latest internationally acclaimed book, The Thistle and the Drone. Professor Akbar S. Ahmed doesn't need any introduction. In his book, he has dealt with the critical issue of drone strikes in Pakistan, which is a major issue in Pakistan of today. Akbar Ahmed is a man of many talents. He is a distinguished scholar, an outstanding diplomat, and a creative filmmaker. Many of you would remember his film on Pakistan's founder, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Jinnah. The book Thistle and the Drone is his third book in his trilogy on the relations between the US and the Muslims world after 9/11. However, today's discussion need not be limited to the issue of drones. I am sure the many admirers of Professor Akbar would be keen to benefit from his views on a range of issues. After all, he is an authority who will enlighten you about Pakistan, especially the tribal areas of Pakistan where he spent quite a bit of time of his youth serving those areas and bringing them through his efforts into pale of civilizations. With these words, I welcome Professor Akbar Ahmed to go going to speak up. Yeah. Please.
I am grateful to you, to the High Commissioner and to the High Commission for organizing this launch. I am grateful to my distinguished colleague, Professor Ian Talbot, for agreeing to be part of this dialogue. And I'm grateful to each one of you for coming here this afternoon. There are far too many friends, good friends, old friends, for me to acknowledge each one of you. I know that some of you have come from out of town, and believe me, I am very grateful, and it's wonderful to see you again. So let me plunge straight into my subject. After 9/11, one big idea dominated the world, particularly Western media, that this was a clash of civilizations. And this is not a new idea. This idea has been around for several thousand years. It goes back to the time of the Greeks, who provide the fountainhead of Western civilization. The idea of Athens, the core of Greek or Hellenistic culture, facing what they call the barbarians from outside the boundaries. And barbarian comes from bar, meaning people who speak a different language. So different language, different culture. And in time, this confrontation became a confrontation between Europe and Asia, between Christianity and Islam, and the idea of two blocks battling it out became a very strong one. And after 9/11, when media, television, radio asked, what is happening? Why did these Muslims attack us? In the United States, a lot of commentators immediately said, it is the clash of civilizations. And in the end, one civilization must prevail. This is a fight to the finish. Now, there were some very big names in this clash of civilizations, advocating it, supporting it. Big names, important players. But contrary to this idea, opposed to this idea, was also the idea of a dialogue of civilizations. Less known, less sensational, but it was there. And there were some key players involved in that dialogue. And Islam constantly points to the need for compassion over revenge. Again and again, the example of the Holy Prophet is to keep compassion above everything, even the need for revenge or even justice. Compassion is supreme. So these conclusions challenge a lot of the accepted mythology of Islam. As Pakistanis, you will be very proud to know that again, Quaid-e-Azam comes through shining and loud, and as Pakistanis, we should never ever forget the role model that he is in Pakistan, and with the violence and the intolerance and the killing of minorities, the slaughter of the Shia in Quetta and so on, we are abandoning the principles on which Pakistan was made. We must never forget this. So even the creation of Pakistan, you have Quaid-e-Azam treating Waziristan, where today you have troops and you have drone strikes and you have all kinds of problems. Quaid-e-Azam says, it's all in the book, he calls the Jirga and he says, this is your border. You will protect it, I'm moving the army out. Now this was historic because the army had never been moved out of the tribal areas. There was always the army there. He just moved them out. And he was now depending on the tribal peoples and giving them honor. And because they function according to a code, they responded with honor. And for the next couple of decades, as long as I was there, into the late 70s, there was never any trouble on this scale. There was always the tribal warfare and someone shoots someone and there's some revenge, but overall there was stability. Today you have a breakdown, and that is very serious because that has huge implications for the future. So these are challenges we face as a global society because societies are interlinked. If the minorities in Pakistan are being persecuted, I feel ashamed of that. I was taught by the Christians, so I feel ashamed to think that those very people who taught me are being persecuted by my people. Then we have to flip it and see that minorities in the West then face similar pressure. So we have to constantly be alert to reach out, to create bridges of companionship and friendship. In that is, I believe, the vision of Islam, the vision of the Abrahamic faiths, and ultimately the vision that Quaid-e-Azam had for Pakistan, which we have so blithely set aside. With that, I want to once again thank my very distinguished young friend, Ambassador Gardezi. I believe he's off very shortly to take up a post as His Excellency. Hawaiian is always Excellency. And Gardezi, is Professor Tolbert speaking now? Yes. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to come to the High Commission and to address this audience about a book which those of you who have already read it or those of you who are going to read it will see how it brings together so many aspects of Professor Akbar Ahmed's life. He's spoken so eloquently that in some senses I didn't know what to say afterwards. But what I will do is I will take you through some of the themes of the book, which is already laid out, and also make a few comments about the book, its significance, and also I think the way in which it really does bring together these aspects of his career as a political agent in Waziristan, a commissioner in Baluchistan, an eminent scholar of the tribal areas of Pakistan, and of course of Islam, and his great work, which he's already referred to in the context of not only Islam, but Islam and religious dialogue. I think speaks so many truths and is based on so much academic and personal life experience. Thank you.
It's my pleasure to speak to you here in London, and as I mentioned to you before, that as a kid I was really fascinated. Who's this gentleman who's written this film Jinnah, and we watched that in I think it was in Al Falah Cinema in Lahore, and now I'm meeting you myself in London personally. It's a great honor indeed. I'd start with, how does it feel to come back to Embassy High Commission again?
Well, I'm coming after a long time, and it's delightful to be back and meet all of you friends here, and the very warm reception and the very kind words I'm hearing, they're overwhelming. I have been very much on a journey over the last decade or two. I've traveled, I've talked to Muslims and non-Muslims, I've written books, I've written plays and poetry, because I do understand that it's a critical time and that each one of us has to become an ambassador to promote this kind of understanding and bridge building, and that's what I've been doing. But it's always a pleasure to be back with the Pakistani community and to be part of a community that I love and that from whom I get so much love.
Agusab, your new book, The Thistle and the Drone, although you've mentioned in this little talk what's this all about, if I had to ask you again in a little sort of crux, how would you say to our audience again?
I would say that this book, The Thistle and the Drone, is based on 40 case studies of tribal societies from Morocco to the Caucasus in the mountains of Russia and down south to the Tausug population in the Philippines. And of course it includes Balochistan, the tribal areas of Pakistan, with these all tribal societies. And I would say that this book leads to certain conclusions without which we cannot understand the modern world and we cannot understand the war on terror. So I would urge them to read it.
Did you also mention your sort of talk that this book is also is sort of a perspective of what West thinks about what Muslims are?
Yes, because I interviewed a lot of people from the East and the West and Muslims, non-Muslims. So as an anthropologist, I try to collect all opinions of society, not just Muslims or non-Muslims. So you will find a very rich variety of opinion.
Within this book, you mean, yeah?
In this book, yes.
And the tribes you researched, when you just said that you followed from Morocco down to Philippines in a way, and studied. Is the majority Muslim, or the all Muslim?
I studied Muslim communities on the periphery, but I also pointed out that the center versus periphery situation is not restricted to Muslims. We are in the UK. Take the relationship between London, the English, and the Scots, or the English and the Irish, again, center and periphery. And it was a very troubled relationship for many centuries until recently they began to create better relations between them. Yes, between us.
Agusab, are there any more launches planned around the world and in Pakistan?
Yes, we have many launches coming up. I'm speaking at the House of Lords. I'm speaking at Chatham House tomorrow. And I hope you'll come because that's always a great forum. And Lord Anthony Giddens, who is the great sociologist, world famous, he's chairing the session. Then I'm speaking at the LSE, and on the 29th, again I request you to come. I'm giving the annual lecture at SOAS.
Agusab, it's an honor seeing you and meeting you in person, and for this
Pleasure to meet you.
my pleasure. Pleasure's all mine. Thank you very much. All the best.